Madagascar is burning. Streets choked with tear gas, tyres ablaze, and a president forced to dissolve his own government after deadly unrest left dozens dead. But the fury hasn't subsided. From electricity blackouts to calls for his removal, Andry Rajoelina faces the biggest challenge of his rule. The question now, can he survive the storm? The Republic of Madagascar, an island nation of 32 million people in the Indian Ocean, is seeing no respite in protests despite its president dissolving the government. Protests in Madagascar began on September 25, 2025, largely triggered by frustration over widespread and prolonged water and electricity cuts across the capital Antananarivo and other cities. The demonstrations were further fueled by general discontent with persistent poverty, government corruption, and dissatisfaction with President Andry Rajoelina's administration. The United Nations says that at least 22 people died and more than 100 were injured. Rajoelina appeared on national television on September 29th to announce the dissolution of the government in an attempt to ease the tensions.
Maybe we haven't met the needs you aspired to, or even listened to the cries and fears you experienced. Therefore, in accordance with Article 54 of the Constitution, I have today taken the decision to dismiss the Prime Minister and dissolve his government. Pending the appointment of the new government, the current government team will continue to serve on an interim basis and handle day-to-day affairs until a new government is appointed.
Despite the president's decision to dissolve the government, the protesters took to the streets again the following day on September 30th. As the protests turned violent, security forces fired tear gas to disperse hundreds of young protesters in Madagascar's capital city. The organisers of the protest on social media said that they were disappointed by the president's speech and demanded an apology from him and the now dismissed Prime Minister, as well as the firing of Antananarivo's administration. The protesters showed displeasure by waving placards with messages such as,
"We need water, we need electricity, Rajoelina out."
I'm fed up, and so are all the Malagasy people, with power cuts, water cuts, and above all the confiscation of rights and power in the hands of a certain population. I think that, as citizens, we have a duty to demonstrate. I think that this movement is the way to change the system. We need to rearrange things because it's this system that makes it easier for power to be monopolized by a certain group of people who only care about their own well-being. Changing the system means setting up truly democratic institutions, not institutions that are used as a tool of repression and domination. We're looking for a Malagasy democratic value system, and that's the objective that drives us.
Inspired by the so-called youth-led Gen Z protests in Kenya and Nepal, the 4 days of demonstrations have been the largest the Indian Ocean island has seen in years, and the most serious challenge Rajoelina has faced since his re-election in 2023. Thousands of people, mostly young demonstrators, have poured onto the streets since Thursday in protest against chronic electricity and water cuts and widespread poverty. The state-owned electric and water services utility Jarama normally posts the almost daily outage schedules on Facebook. But on September 25th, the day the protests erupted, it suspended the group's activity for 36 days, including new posts and comments. The crisis in Madagascar is not just about outages and hunger, it is about legitimacy. Since winning re-election in 2023, Rajoelina has struggled to deliver on promises of development. Instead, his administration has been accused of corruption and extravagance. His flagship project, the cable car system in Antananarivo, was hailed as a symbol of modernisation. Instead, it has become a target of rage, with several stations torched by protesters who saw it as wasteful spending while basic services collapsed. The opposition has seized on the moment, calling for Rajoelina's resignation. social media movements demand not just a new government, but a new constitution, new elections, and new leadership. The symbolism is potent. Protesters chant not only against power cuts, but against power monopolies. Observers warn that the president's hold on power now depends on the military's loyalty. Reports have emerged of some soldiers joining protesters, or at least refusing to confront them. If the army fractures, Rajoelina's government could collapse. For many Malagasy, this crisis feels like history repeating itself. The country has endured a cycle of coups and uprisings, 1972, 1991, 2002, 2009. Each time, public anger forced leaders from power, but systemic poverty and corruption endured. This time, the anger is being carried by a younger, more connected generation. Some protesters explicitly reference movements abroad. In Kenya, youth protests forced major policy changes on taxation. In Nepal, students brought down political elites with social media campaigns. In Madagascar, demonstrators carry pirate flags, a symbol of rebellion spreading across youth-led uprisings worldwide. Yet, the grievances are firmly homegrown. For decades, the country's rulers have failed to update electricity grids, water systems, and housing. Antananarivo, once a colonial capital, is now buckling under mass migration from the countryside. Slums rise on paddy fields. Families live without running water. Meanwhile, elites enrich themselves on mining contracts and luxury imports. The stakes are clear. If Rajoelina survives, it may be by forming a unity government or offering sweeping reforms. But many believe cosmetic changes won't suffice. As one protester put it, "We don't want another government of the same system. We want a new system." The international community watches nervously. France, Madagascar's former colonial ruler, has urged calm. The African Union has called for dialogue. But mediation may be difficult as Rajoelina is deeply unpopular and opposition leaders sense an opportunity. United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, Head Volker Turk, said he was shocked by the security forces' violent crackdown that he said also saw arrests, beatings, and live bullets used against demonstrators.
I urge the security forces to desist from the use of unnecessary and disproportionate force, and to immediately release all arbitrarily detained protesters.
For now, the island is tense. Nights are quieter under curfew, but the mornings bring fresh marches. Tires still burn, roads remain blocked, and the chants grow louder. Rajoelina out. Whether this is the calm before the storm or the beginning of his downfall will depend on how the next days unfold. For President Andry Rajoelina, once a populist outsider, the question is not just whether he can restore electricity, but whether he can still hold power at all.